Everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here today to discuss NC State's big Saturday matchup against number 15 Miami. That's number 15 in the college football playoff ranking, which is really the ranking that matters at this point. I've been using that one over the AP poll rankings for college football at this point in the season, because that's what this is all about. And this game has some massive playoff implications because the Hurricanes are still alive in this playoff hunt with the chaos that's happened in the ACC. NC State's a major part of that chaos as they have two wins against two teams that are, towards the top of the ACC in Virginia and Georgia Tech. And that win over Georgia Tech really shook things up. Georgia Tech looked like it was kind of going to walk into the ACC title game. And now this conference is in flux. It's looking like, there's a world where the ACC doesn't even get one team in the college football playoff. But if Miami can survive this final stretch and go into the December selection situation with a 10-2 record, even if they are not playing in the ACC championship, they'll have an outside shot of playing in the college football playoff. So this is a very important game for them. It's also a game where NC State can reach bowl eligibility with a win and get a second ranked win in a row, which would be massive for Dave Doran and this program, proving that it can compete with the top of the ACC. It can compete in this new, very balanced, very parity heavy version of this conference. So as we always do, we are going to dive in and give you a game day preview of the matchup against the Hurricanes. This game's set to kick off at 3:30 p.m. on ESPN. Sorry if you have YouTube TV. If you do, go ahead and kick it with us on the live game thread. I'll be providing updates throughout the game. Did not make the trip out to Miami, but I will be watching closely and breaking things down for you from afar. Live game thread will be posted about 90 minutes before kickoff. So I'll make sure to get that up for you all, and you can tune in right there. Let's dive in, as we always do. Our game day previews, if you're new, consist of a stat prediction for both teams, storylines and things to watch in the game, a bold prediction, a worst case scenario for NC State, and then we wrap up with the final score prediction. Of course, you can see our official or my official game day predictions in a written form when those come out tomorrow as well. They'll be similar. I just go into a little bit more depth in terms of some of the storylines on that because it's easier to kind of write those out. Let's start with the stats, and we'll start with NC State. CJ Bailey coming off of his best performance of the season against Georgia Tech, got that bye week to recharge, figure some things out. And this is an important game for him. And I'll talk about that a little bit more, but he is going home here to South Florida. I just think that this Miami defense, when it's firing on all cylinders, is really tough to handle. And this NC State offensive line, which has, skirted around some stronger defensive lines with success, this might be a lot for them to handle. I think it's going to be a game where NC State's going to have to find a way to run the ball effectively. So Bailey's going to be limited to about 240, maybe 250 passing yards, two touchdowns passing, and a rushing touchdown. I think he adds one on the ground. Um, I think NC State is able to get things going on the ground better than many teams have against Miami because Hollywood Smothers is supposedly going to be back. Listed as questionable on the availability report, but CBS Sports' Matt Zanetz reported that Hollywood could be back as well as Justin Jolie. It's looking more likely than not, in his words. So I have Hollywood coming back, rushing for 80 yards and a touchdown. For the receivers, I have Terrell Anderson and Noah Rogers combining for 120 receiving yards. And I have Jolie coming back, catching four passes for 40 yards and a score. So I think this NC State team can you know, put some points on the board but it's gonna have to start early, and you can't dig yourself too much of a hole against this defense and let it, pin its ears back and play the way that it wants to downhill, stopping the run, sacking your quarterback, and getting you off schedule. As for Miami, I think Carson Beck probably found some things in that easier matchup against Syracuse, got a little bit more confidence back. Um, I still think the turnovers are a concern with him. I have him throwing for about 280 yards, three touchdowns, and an interception. I'll get into the turnovers a little bit later, but that's something that could be a major storyline in this game. Malachi Tony, the stud freshman receiver, one of my favorite players to watch in all of college football. Tremendous athlete, great speed, really, really phenomenal football player. He's been contained and bottled up a few times this season. I don't think NC State has the personnel to do that. They can try to bracket him and take him out of the game that way, but Miami has other playmakers that'll beat you. So I think they'll try to play him straight up. And I think if they do that, he's going to have a big day. It's going to be, 100+ yard type day for him with a touchdown if they kind of play him straight up. We'll see how NC State approaches that given, some of the deficiencies in the back end right now. Miami is going to be without Mark Fletcher, their standout running back. Luckily for them, they have some really talented fresh legs in the backfield in Chamar Brown. I expect him to put together a nice game, maybe in the 90-yard range with a touchdown, given NC State's issues against the run. And then I have a defensive stat projection here. I think Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor are able to combine for a pair of sacks in this one. Those guys are other than maybe Boubacar Traore from Notre Dame, those guys are easily the best defensive linemen that NC State will have faced to this point. Those are your stat projections. Let's go ahead and dive into the storylines and things to watch in this game. And we'll start with the injury report. And I'll have a day of report. I'll get that out like an hour before the game. So you can get the full scoop on that because that'll be the final report. I expect Doran to utilize that game time decision tag quite a bit and have some smoke and mirrors for NC State like they did against Georgia Tech. But if Matt Zanet's report is right, Hollywood Smothers and Justin Jolie should be back. Miami has some concerns on the injury report. They've already listed two major pieces out. As I said, Fletcher is out, and also their star defensive back, Keontae Scott, who Doran talked about all week. A lot of the NC State offensive players talked about all week. This is a guy who's a phenomenal defensive back, plays all over, is a tackling machine and has been really, really effective for the Hurricanes this season. He's one of their top three rated defenders on PFF. So it's real with him. He's elite. So it's going to be a next man up mentality for that Miami secondary to step in and fill that role. That's why I think NC State's receivers might have a little more success than I would have expected. And I think Joe Lee will have a little bit more success if he's able to play, but we will see. Forcing turnovers is going to be a major point of contention for these two teams because NC State, it hasn't been an area of strength for them this season. They've barely intercepted opposing quarterbacks. They really haven't forced many fumbles, and it hasn't been a super consistent season in that regard. And so Carson Beck offers an opportunity because in games where Beck has thrown two or more interceptions, or this season, Miami is 1-2 in those such games. So I've talked about Bailey's issues turning the ball over. That's pretty well documented. He's had those two four-interception games. Those were both losses. He typically when he's struggling with turn or sorry, those were three-interception games. Excuse me. When he's struggling with turnovers, it can be a long day for this NC State offense. That usually means he's pressing, and these teams are similar in the sense that when their quarterbacks are turning the ball over frequently, it's hard for them to win because the both offenses are so predicated on accuracy and their quarterbacks being able to make those plays in tight windows. And so if these two are having problems or one or the other, it could be a long day for whichever team is having those issues. And to me, I worry more about Bailey because there's my next storyline, controlling the emotions. This is a really, really big game for him. I know he downplayed it throughout the week. He's going back to his hometown to a school that tried to flip him on signing day. There's history there. He again downplayed it big time, but after that Georgia Tech game, when his emotions were running a little higher, he sounded a lot more fired up about this game than he did this week. And I think that was a little bit of coaching in that regard. And I know Dave Doran said that they've talked to him. They've talked to a lot of the other guys who are from Florida who, the juices are really going in this game because they want to go down there and they want to beat a team that they feel overlooked them despite being from the state and a team that recruits really heavily in the state of Florida. And Bailey, felt a little bit of disrespect. The knock on him in high school was, yeah, he's a good quarterback, but look who he's throwing to. He had Jeremiah Smith, he had JoJo Trader. Um, these he had a lot of talent around him, so that was kind of a knock on him. But I think he's more than proven that he was equally valuable to those teams and is a really adequate college quarterback. So this is a big game for him. He's going to have to control those emotions. He's going to have to keep his cool and if NC State wants to have a shot to win this game, they can't be pressing, they can't be trying to do too much. They just have to play their game like they did against Georgia Tech. My last storyline and thing to watch is slowing down this Miami defensive line. I've talked about Mesidor and Ruben Bain already. These guys are monsters on the edges and they move around and they wreck your game. These are game wreckers by definition. They are two of the best defenders in the country. Mesidor is going to be fired up because I believe this is senior day for Miami. I could be wrong on that, but um, he's one of the original Cristobal guys, one of the first guys that Cristobal brought to Coral Gables and to Miami Gardens. So this is a big game for him, and there's going to be a lot of emotions. And then Bain is kind of trying to cruise to that top 10, top 15 draft pick stock, and every rep matters for these two guys, and they're going against a defensive line or an offensive line that has been solid and has been missing its two interior offensive linemen at right and left guard in Spike Souls and Anthony Carter Jr. for the past couple games. And Rico Jackson and Kamen Smith have come in. They've done okay. They've done their job. The pressure hasn't been overwhelming on Bailey, and the tackles have been the strength of this group all season long. Jacarius Peak on the left side, Teague Anderson on the right. These guys have kept Bailey upright for the most part, and this is going to be a major challenge for them because these are two really, really good defensive ends. And edge rushers who, like I said, can ruin your day. And if these guys can slow them down and prevent Bailey from being sacked with great consistency, NC State's going to have a shot to win this game. Bold prediction. I think CJ Bailey goes out there, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I think there's a world where CJ Bailey goes out there and he plays to the standard that he set in that Georgia Tech game. That is his ceiling. A quarterback that hits his targets with accuracy, that can hit his targets on all three levels, short, intermediate, deep. He completed every pass he needed to. He was smart in the pocket. He moved around when he needed to. He ran when he needed to. He didn't throw the ball away and accidentally throw an interception like he did against Pitt and Notre Dame. He figured some things out. He found some confidence, and when he's playing like a confident quarterback, he's really, really tough to stop. And obviously, like I said, this is a big game for him. This is a really big game for a lot of reasons, and I think you know where I'm going with that. And I'm not gonna say that right now, but this is a paycheck kind of game, and I'll leave it at that. If he can go out and win two games in a row against top 20 competition, he puts himself on the map as one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC and, a top 30 quarterback in the country. That's where that's my bold prediction. If he wins this game, and they're not going to win without they need him to play at a high level. There's a world where NC State makes this a shootout and Bailey's able to outlast Carson Beck. I don't know if Beck is super comfortable at the end of games pressing like that. We've seen it at Georgia. Didn't he? That's when he starts to turn the ball over. He also has not looked great coming from behind this season. The example being that Louisville game. That was his worst game of the season with the interceptions. It's when he was blaming his receivers for running the wrong route. That's not good. And so if Bailey can be a front runner like he was against Georgia Tech and make Beck be the quarterback under pressure, NC State can win this game. Worst case scenario, NC State can't slow down the Miami pass rush. Beck is on point and Bailey isn't. And if Beck's on point with the receivers that they have and the talent that they have on that offense, it could be a really, really long day. And I think, NC State kind of played a perfect game against Georgia Tech. They ran the ball so efficiently. Bailey was so accurate. Georgia Tech's defense is not as good as Miami's. Not even close. Secondary, awful. Defensive line, solid, but didn't play very well. Run defense, awful. Miami's only allowing 88 yards per game on the ground. Duke Scott, for reference, ran for 196 against Georgia Tech. That's the backup running back. That's not going to happen on tomorrow, or that's not going to happen today because I'm recording this Friday. It's coming out on Saturday. It's not going to happen. It's just not. Miami's too talented on the defense. So you're going to have to pass the ball. And if the pass rush is firing on all cylinders, it could be a really, really long day for NC State. It could be. However, my score prediction would say that I don't think it's going to be a long day. I think NC State's going to keep this game very close throughout, but I do think the strength of Miami on that defense is going to prevent them from scoring enough to walk out of Hard Rock Stadium with a win. I do think, that this isn't going to be like a major home field advantage game for Miami. It'll probably be pretty empty in that place. Um, so I think, NC State won't lack any comfort. It'll probably be nice to play in some warm weather again. I know Kenny Soares said he kind of missed that. So I think NC State keeps it close, but ultimately falls short and loses 31-28. And that's assuming that this offense, that performance against Georgia Tech was kind of a one-hit wonder. We've seen how the offense played in that game in spurts, which is kind of more what I'm predicting in this game. But if that's like how they're going to play and that's what they've figured out, and Bailey's going to spread the ball to all of his receivers and, attack, then NC State's going to win this game. But I'm banking on that being an extreme and the norm being kind of what we've already seen. And I think the norm is not strong enough to beat this Miami team. That's all I got for the game day preview. As always, thanks for tuning in. And if you want more content, you can go ahead and follow me on X at Senate Tucker. You can go ahead and follow the website's X account at Wolfpack on SI. And of course, get daily episodes of the NC State Insider Podcast on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Have a good day.